We got low. Legend of winner 2023 playoffs will expose these teams.
So, the playoffs have officially
And
started,
the Lakers,
and boy,
right?
am I ecstatic.
And the
Not only
Suns.
because the regular season dragged on a little bit longer than I actually wanted to, especially in the last 15 games where everyone was just deciding to sit out, but more importantly, I believe that this postseason run that we're about to witness will be one of the most important playoffs that we've seen in recent memory. And the reason for this is because of the storylines, questions, and even though it may sound cheesy, some players' legacies being on the line in the upcoming months. And what makes everything even more interesting is that there's roughly 6 to 8 teams in the NBA who have genuinely convinced themselves that they have the ability to win the championship this year.
Blake Griffin
but as
doing?
We all know there will only be one winner, which means that there will be a handful of disappointments this year, which once more will give us some of the answers that we have been seeking, be able to really give us an understanding of where some of these franchises are heading into in the upcoming years, but more importantly, be a turning point and a defining marker in several players' careers and legacies. First, we have 3 teams who've already cemented their legacy.
This man took a hop step for no reason, bro.
To achieve, so losing or even being underwhelming in the playoffs wouldn't be the end of the world. However, winning a championship certainly wouldn't hurt. And those 3 teams are the Milwaukee Bucks, Golden State Warriors, and the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, in terms of the Warriors and Lakers,
You said these are the top 3 teams in the NBA right now?
you can easily
Nah, it's the Grizzlies, 76ers, and Clippers. The 76ers just swept the Nets. How come the 76ers are not on here?
To lose if they are underwhelming in this postseason run, especially since both of these teams are susceptible to early exits in the playoffs. You can easily argue if the Warriors get knocked out in the first round, it would be the end of the Curry, Dre, and Clay era. And then when it comes to Lakers,
the Draymond free agent,
especially on the
after the season,
where you can avoid the Denver Nuggets, Clippers, and Suns, you can also draw some conclusions, in particular to some of the role players in Vanderbilt, Austin Reeves, and D'Angelo Russell, who are all trying to prove their value as
Reeves a free agent too, I think.
Coming months, especially
the Lakers gonna let him go, just like they let go of Caruso.
The Lakers might move in a different direction. And also when it comes to Anthony Davis, who has shown that he has the ability to be the best player on the Lakers, we will definitely get the opportunity to see, does he have the ability to carry that production over into the playoffs? But as we all know, the 3 players who are going to benefit the most are Giannis, Curry, and LeBron. Giannis at
how about Harden, John Moran, and Westbrook?
Spearhead him into conversations amongst other all-time great players, in particular players who fall between the range of 10 and 15 or 10 and 20, because I do believe with a resume at 28 that is comparable with Tim Duncan, Michael Jordan, and LeBron James, we will definitely start having some genuine conversations about how great of a player
Giannis can do that? He can do a reverse layup?
And then when it comes
all he knows is dunking the ball.
There is still some hesitation to put him in
and strong layups. I didn't know he knew he had some nice finesse game. Okay.
However, winning another championship with almost unanimous.
Why is there Floyd gray?
Player of all time.
Why couldn't the Florida stay yellow?
Up for many people to ask themselves, what would he need to do to be unanimously over Magic Johnson as the greatest point guard to ever live? And then when it comes to LeBron, man, I don't really think that I have to really go into that much detail about this. And I do believe that NBA discourse will be ruined for like 5 to 6 months straight. But I want you to close your eyes and imagine what LeBron James fans will be able to say if the Lakers are able to win a championship this year. LeBron, in year 20, was able to take a 7th seeded team to the NBA Finals and win a championship, which has never been done before, while being the best player on the team.
7th seed never won a championship before? Or made to the finals?
He pulls that off. Up next, we have 2 teams that...
Chocolate fixes...
No, sponsored by...
You're welcome. Edible delivers. Order online or in store.
That are roughly in the middle. Teams that have some questions that need to be answered and certainly have some pressure to make a deep postseason run, if not win a championship, as both of these franchises have the ability to do so. However, if they fail in the process, it really won't be that big of a deal. The 2 teams that I'm referring to are the Boston Celtics and Denver Nuggets. When it comes to Boston, respectfully, they have been one of the more successful franchises over the past 4 to 5 years. Constantly at the top of the standings, consistently making conference finals appearances, and their success reached new heights last season by making the NBA Finals. And with this level of success, it has really validated every meticulous decision that has been made during the Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum era. And that's even the decision on not trading Tatum or Brown, even though the Celtics have been tempted on doing so on several different occasions. Which then brings us to this season. Boston once more was tempted to trade one of their young stars in Jaylen Brown for a ready-now talent in Kevin Durant. However, the transaction was declined for various reasons, but in the process of doing so, the Celtics as a roster has seen noticeable improvements from the prior year, in particular, the addition of adding Malcolm Brogdon, who has been a heaven sent for this organization.
Won Sixth Man of the Year.
Potentially could win Sixth Man of the Year.
He did.
So now with easily one of the most talented rosters in the NBA, and I would argue they are the most talented roster in this association, it does give us the opportunity to see if Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are good enough to rise to the occasion and lead this team to a championship that they've been slowly building to over the past several years now. And from an individual standpoint, winning a championship would do wonders for Jason Tatum's career, as he would not only unanimously be viewed as a superstar moving forward, but more importantly, Tatum more than likely will never win an MVP in a league that features Luka, Giannis, Embiid, and Jokic. So winning a championship will cement and potentially separate himself from a lot of his peers. And then when it comes to Jaylen Brown, winning a championship will immortalize who he is as a player, as second options tend to be forgotten, or at least forgotten how good they were throughout their prime, if they aren't able to achieve that level of success or put up all-time great numbers. However, if the Celtics fail to win a championship or don't even make it out of the finals, and God
gonna trade
forbid,
one though, are they?
Second round,
fire the coach.
Philadelphia 76ers. Well, the doubters.
They're gonna lose to the 76ers. They make it to. If they make it to the second round, they're gonna lose to the 76ers. Same thing with you, Hawks. If y'all manage to come back from 3-1.
Being good enough to win a championship,
y'all gonna lose the 76ers, so that's that.
And it would be even worse if the Suns went on.
Y'all about to blow a 3-1 lead, the Suns, yeah.
With Kevin Durant leading them to that type of success, as the Celtics had the opportunity to trade Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant during the offseason. However, the reason why I say this wouldn't be that big of a deal is because both Tatum and Brown are still fairly young. They have several more opportunities to prove themselves as a duo, and I don't believe that people should overreact, but I do know that's how the NBA community kind of works itself out, so I'm already expecting it. And then finally, we have the Denver Nuggets, which honestly is just a bunch of pressure being put on Jokic because there's a subsection of the NBA community. Over the past 2 to 3 years, the 6'11"
Love thinks he's a coach.
Meteoric rise to NBA stardom, as the Joker has put up impressive numbers, inserting himself in conversations to be an all-time great offensive player, which has all culminated into 2 league MVP awards. And even this season,
you saw that video, 5 dudes dressed up as Jokic go to the LA Fitness and just light everything up.
A subsection in the NBA community who's decided to give that a lot of
full court passes, no look passes, all types of cuts, floaters.
Jokic is a really great player. They do not believe that he should receive
soundboard shuffles,
MVPs, all of which in a row, because he is not of that status of all-time great players. So that's one subsection of criticism for Jokic. Now, in defense of Jokic, there is another subsection of the NBA community that supports the claims that he is an all-time great performer, and to support that claim, those people tend to lean heavy on advanced analytics, which then, of course, upsets another subsection of NBA fandom.
What did KD say, man? No one's trying to look at graphs while I'm talking about basketball, buddy. No one's trying to look at graphs.
Upsets another subsection of NBA fandom because there's certainly a bunch of people who are quote-unquote purists or traditionalists.
Yo, get this man off my screen.
Advanced analytics, or at least not heavily relying on them to determine
who is this, David? Bro.
And then you have another section of the NBA community, I like to call them.
Who is the commissioner before David Stern?
We just want to see Jokic as one of the best players in the NBA compete for a deep postseason run and eventually a championship. Because, of course, if you are a league MVP at the top of the conference,
man, I want Ant to win so bad. I want Ant to win that series, man.
Be placed upon those type of players. And an even bigger question that I do believe a lot of people want to.
After you got dropped off by the Grizzlies last year, man.
Legitimate criticism to Jokic, especially since he's a censor, and that is, will Jokic's inabilities on the defensive side of the floor turn out to be a detriment to the Denver Nuggets, regardless of how excellent that he can be on the offensive side? But as a normal fan, the reason why it's not going to be that big of a deal if Jokic is not able to lead this team to a championship this year or even a deep postseason run is because Jokic and this core are all still relatively young. They have more time, and I don't believe the Western Conference is going to become significantly more competitive anytime soon. But I will admit that this year is probably the best opportunity to take advantage of a Western Conference that is fairly wide open. And then finally, we have 3 franchises who honestly have given themselves little to no wiggle room to compete for a championship, but certainly has to make a deep postseason run. And what makes these 3 teams interesting is that they've all put themselves in a situation where their playoff run could end much earlier than expected.
Sponsored by Coach? I didn't know you were a Coach low. So you sponsored by Cadillac? I didn't know you had a Cadillac low.
Those three teams are the Los Angeles Clippers, Phoenix Suns, and the Philadelphia 76ers. Hey here, Future Low. And yeah, gotta cut out the Clipper part of this video because, you know, Kawhi has a bum knee, and yet again, it is aggravating him. So he's going to be in and out of the lineup for most of this postseason run if the Clippers are able to make it.
Now they got Russell Westbrook. They're going to be all right.
Which sucks.
They got Russ. They're going to be all right. They're going to come back from 3-1.
And Kawhi experiment.
Don't worry about Paul George going to come back next series.
Payroll. Talk about how this team still is incomplete from a roster perspective. And of course, the cherry on top of everything would have been the Russell Westbrook angle. Does he have the ability to prove that he can be a positive for a team that is attempting to compete for a championship?
Yes.
Because you could very well argue that this is his last opportunity. But again, can't talk about it because this is a cursed franchise and Kawhi has a bum knee. So let's just talk about the Suns and Sixers. First, we have the Suns, and boy, I don't even know where to begin. From a front office perspective, this is an organization that identified that Devin Booker might not be good enough to be the best player on the championship roster, so they leveraged their depth and defense to go after win-now talent in Kevin Durant. The problem, though, is that KD, ever since he's been recovering from that Achilles injury, has been dealing with nagging injuries at the sideline
unfortunately
for most of the last 3 to 4 years now. And because of that, I do believe it's safe to assume that the window of opportunity...
They've been healthy during the playoffs, though.
Is much more smaller than I believe a lot of people want to admit. And so taking advantage of a fairly wide open Western Conference is certainly going to be important this season. Speaking of Kevin Durant, with him, man, there's a medley of things to talk about. A, the looming belief that Kevin Durant doesn't have the ability to lead a team to a championship, especially since he's failed miserably since he left the Golden State Warriors out in Brooklyn. Also, speaking upon failures, last year was by far the worst postseason performance I've ever seen from Kevin Durant, so obviously attempting to bounce back from that would be great.
First round.
But again, more importantly, Kevin Durant is older, dealing with ongoing injuries.
And they had to go through the plan.
It definitely feels like the window of opportunity for him is closing quicker than I think a lot of people are expecting. And speaking of the window of opportunity closing, boy, this might be the last chance for Chris Paul. I hate watching Chris Paul.
It was only a matter of time, right?
Because it's really hard for me to accept that that's the type of player that he is. He's a defensive liability. He's afraid to shoot three-pointers, especially when players are closing out on him. He doesn't have the ability to get to the basket whatsoever. Fun fact, throughout the entire regular season, Chris Paul only attempted 29 shots in the restricted area. And so when I see CP3 at this stage of his career...
CP, the month you have the ball in your hands?
Understandable. It's really hard to accept the fact that this is the player that he is, especially since he hasn't won a championship yet. But I guess it is a good opportunity that he has at least one more opportunity to win a championship. But if the Suns do...
Why ain't on Chris Paul? You know what's crazy, too? After, like, at the post-game interview, they asked him, the first thing they asked him was, are you going to retire? Hey, second that man loses, oh, are you going to retire? They asked him that last year, too, when he lost to the Mavericks. Are you going to retire? Oh, they want this man to retire, bro.
Really bad. I do believe that the front office is going to move in a different direction.
Are you going to retire? You just lost. You just lost in the playoffs. Are you going to retire? Your team just got eliminated. Are you going to retire?
The reason why all this is very interesting is that even though yes, there is a possibility,
they want them up out of here, man.
It's also very reasonable to believe that the Suns won't even make it out of the second round, as they more than likely will have to match up with a Denver Nuggets team that has way more chemistry and continuity built up with one another than the Phoenix Suns, which is something that I've seen them struggle with consistently since making the Kevin Durant trade. And then finally, we have the Philadelphia 76ers, who in my opinion have the most pressure in this year's postseason run, and it is blowing me away how so many people in the NBA community are letting this team off the hook. Of course,
I'm not.
The Doc Rivers angle. One of the most underwhelming coaches in the NBA post-2010. If you look at his resume in contrast to the amount of talent that he's had the ability to coach, once more, completely underwhelming. He definitely will receive a lot of scrutiny if this team underperforms. Then we have the James Harden angle, who has been identified as a playoff choker or someone who consistently underperforms in a postseason, and his defenders has given him the excuse that he's had to consistently carry an unfair amount of offensive load that has altered his ability to be effective in the postseason. However, that excuse is not thrown out the window, as now he has the privilege to play alongside Joel Embiid, and Embiid more than likely will carry a large portion of the offensive load, so we should be able to see a more consistent version of Harden throughout this postseason run. Also, Harden is getting up there in age. I do believe the window of opportunity for him is closing quicker than I think a lot of people are willing to admit. But
It
a much bigger
is?
picture that I
How?
want people to really understand when it comes to the
The part they say he's gonna go back to the Rockets. They just hired Emi Udoka. He just hired him,
Philadelphia 76ers.
and he went to the finals with the Celtics in his first season.
10-year anniversary of
So
the
no
Sixers
telling what he's gonna do with the
starting off the
Rockets.
process by hiring Sam Hinkie. And the whole premise of the process is that the Sixers are supposed to purposely lose games, tank in order to receive a high draft pick, and through that process draft the superstar caliber player that is necessary for a team to win a championship. And that player would end up being Joel Embiid, who so far in his career has not been able to lead the Sixers beyond a second round appearance. And it seems like this year they might not be able to make it to the conference finals once more.
They ain't lost in the second round how many years in a row now? Dang.
Celtics in the
Sad.
second round.
Hopefully they can make it out. They are gonna make it out. They're gonna make it to the
Celtics
finals,
and making their
76ers.
first conference finals appearance since the early 2000s will certainly answer a lot of questions for us. But in my opinion, I think Boston is a better team. So realistically speaking, there's a very real possibility that the Sixers will once more fail to make a deep postseason run. And if the Sixers fail in this process, I do believe that will leave some irreparable damage done to the legacy of Doc Rivers, James Harden, and especially Joel Embiid. And honestly,
Embiid's gonna ask for a trade?
but I don't want to spoil a potential video down the road. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. There's so many storylines to cover in this year's postseason run. I cannot wait for us to get into the second round, because that's when things get really juicy and we can really get down to the bottom of some of these very legitimate questions that need to be answered. Also, if you enjoy watching playoff games, which I'm pretty sure you do, check me out. I'm streaming playoff games almost every single night at playback.tv, or you can click the link in the description below.
No way.
Until next time,
Why are
I'll
you
see y'all
yelling?
later. Peace.